Great to be with you all this morning, and excited to talk a little bit about the Department of Energy and how the DOE is supporting data center work. As a quick introduction to myself, my name is Louise White. I'm a consultant with the Department of Energy's Loan Programs Office, where I spend a lot of my time focused on grid modernization and power sector solutions to support near-term demand growth, a lot of which is being driven by data centers, as you all know. I'm going to set a little bit of the context this morning and then introduce my wonderful colleagues. As you all know in this room, artificial intelligence is a big priority for the Department of Energy and for the US. It is a national economic and national security priority that we continue to support AI development here at home in the US. And a big part of DOE's work in the AI space spans the full spectrum, all the way from chip designs, basic science research, AI algorithms, and into the energy space, which is where we're going to focus our conversation today. How do we get the power infrastructure that we need to power these data centers to develop and innovate AI? So to set the stage, where DOE is focused in that energy conversation, we see four big areas of opportunity that we want to continue to invest in to make sure that we can meet this moment. First is figuring out how we can better use existing infrastructure that we have today to help meet particularly near-term needs. So whether that's better using our transmission systems or restarting and uprating nuclear plants, or full range of solutions. We want to better use our existing infrastructure. We also see a big opportunity for behind-the-meter flexibility and efficiency, opportunities to use distributed energy resources or improve the efficiency of our data centers. Third is building new infrastructure, so building new transmission lines, building new nuclear, new geothermal, new gas to power new data center development. And then lastly is making sure that we have the right regulatory system to develop tariffs and other regulatory models to make sure that costs and system impacts are fairly distributed and considered. So those are four of the big areas. And across all of those, President Trump, the administration, DOE, and all of the other agencies are very focused on making sure that we are removing roadblocks and supporting broader energy infrastructure to meet data center needs. And so we're going to dive a bunch more into those key topic areas over the next few minutes, and with my colleagues, hoping that you leave this room with a better sense of what DOE is doing in the AI kind of energy nexus, and how you can engage and work with us to support your work in the field. So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce several of our wonderful folks from across different DOE offices. First, Paul Gaucher, who is the Deputy Director for DOE's Industrial Technology Office, ITO. Paul supports the ITO Director and is responsible for program management with industry, academia, and national laboratory collaborations. Previously, Paul served as the founder and managing director of Stell Energy and has been a manager at the Sandia National Lab, and also spent 15 years in the semiconductor industry. Jen Downing is a senior advisor at the DOE's Loan Programs Office, LPO. She leads business development for the Title 17 loan program, which we'll talk a bit more about. In her prior role at LPO, Jen was on the strategy team and was also the lead author for DOE's Virtual Power Plants Pathways to Commercial Liftoff report, looking at the opportunity to improve demand-side flexibility and operations. Prior to joining DOE, Jen was a senior manager at consulting firm Bain & Company. And last but not least, Pranava Raparla is a Presidential Innovation Fellow at DOE's Office of Critical and Emerging Technology, CET, which does a lot of our AI work, and the Office of Policy. His work focuses on building AI tools to improve permitting and siting for infrastructure projects, and co-leading DOE's Data Center Engagement Team, which works very closely with industry on a wide range of topics. Prior to his fellowship, Pranava was a senior product manager at Microsoft. So I'm going to have a few opening questions for folks, but we are hoping to have plenty of time at the end for audience questions. So as we're talking, make sure you're noting down any questions you have so we can get them in at the end. But with that, let's start. Paul, I'll start with you. Your office has been working with the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab on tracking and estimating data center energy use and efficiency. Can you share some of the findings of that work and your observations of what has changed in the data center industry over time?
Thanks, Louise, for the introduction. And good morning again to my fellow panelists here. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here today. Lovely spring day in Washington, D.C. In December, LBNL, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, published a report that was required by Congress. It's an updated report that has been published before on load growth for data centers. Obviously, this time around, it's garnered a lot of attention. With over 30,000 hits. So if you haven't seen it in this audience, I'd be a bit surprised, but you will be able to find it very, very easily if you do a Google search on it. That report highlighted that over the last decade, demand growth in data centers increased by a factor of 3. And that over the period of about now through 2028, it's estimated to double or triple again. So that's very, very significant growth in the forecast from them. They do a very sophisticated bottom-up model to do that analysis, which is a bit different to the way that other analyses are done. So just to break that apart in a bit more detail, approximately 5% of current load serves data centers nationwide. In the last report, estimated was about 4.4% in 2023. Going up through 2028, it's expected to be from about 7 to 12%. And that's 12%, 7 to 12% of 2028's total load estimate, not on the current load estimate of the country. So that, in a nutshell, in terms of terawatt hours, takes us from 58 terawatt hours to 580 terawatt hours over a 14-year period. So note what I just said. I added a 0. So 58 to 580. So that's a 10x increase over the period 2014 to 2028. That is extremely significant. And of course, as I think we all know here, you probably better than us, that's due to AI load growth. So I'll speak a bit about these high chairs are very inconvenient to us. We were discussing that a little bit earlier. It would be nice to lounge back a bit more. A little bit of analysis done by LBNL. So LBNL hosts the National Center of Expertise in this area. They've spent a lot of time over the decades studying things like data collection of power utilization effectiveness, PUE. You probably know that term as well as we do. Noting that 20 years ago, PUEs were north of 3. And I understand that the latest and greatest hyperscaler facilities are as low as about 1.05 or thereabouts. So those efficiencies are already largely achieved. Quantifying air quality when using things like airside economizers for cooling, studying hot and cold aisle separation, energy benefits associated with shifting to the cloud when that was the early days of cloud computing, and energy benefits of server virtualization in the early days of that. And through those reports and studies, it's highlighted the issues and it's helped the industry move forward on all of those metrics. I'll turn it back to you.
So load is growing is what I'm taking away. So load is growing, but we have had big efficiency gains, which is, I think, important to note and curious to hear a little bit more also about your thoughts on what the opportunity is there. Staking on this for a minute, for LBNL, I know you are continuing to do some work, hosting some workshops with industry convenings. Could you speak a little bit more to what your office, ITO, is doing and what LBNL is doing with industry on supporting kind of the current needs for data center power?
Sure, it's a good follow-on question. ITO is one of the offices in DOE that supports the Lawrence Berkeley Lab Center of Expertise on Data Center Efficiency, so that's its full name. I think we can just call it LBNL moving forward in this chat. We're committed working with them to provide innovative, effective solutions designed to support a number of different entities from state agencies, utilities, grid operators, technology developers, data centers themselves during this time of increased load. We work really closely with LBNL, and we might not have an opportunity to talk about some other programs that we have, like on-site energy. If time permits, we'll come back to that. But LBNL is one of the centers that provides a lot of this expertise. They offer assessment tools, trainings on specific technologies and best practices, and they have a certification program for data center energy practitioners. In October, at our request, LBNL hosted a workshop on data center load flexibility. And I attended. I was really impressed by the diversity of stakeholders and the fact that very significant players, from hyperscalers to a number of other stakeholders, attended and had a very fruitful conversation. So that included data center owners, operators, developers, representatives from utilities and regulators, industry stakeholders, and the research community from multiple national labs and universities. The primary objective of that was to explore opportunities for integrating demand flexibility into data center. And the way I think about it is that demand flexibility is sort of in two macro parts. One is, what can a data center do on its own or working with the grid to make use of the load that is available, and then the other one is on-site solutions like batteries and so forth. So it was a day-long exploration around that, including specific topics like advanced demand response programs, on-site energy generation, thermal storage, large-scale batteries, and additional technologies to enhance the grid. But it did also reveal that there are a number of bottlenecks or issues, barriers that do need to be addressed. It's easy to say that we can do load flexing working with the utility, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of barriers that include regulatory complexity. And then also we've got the geographic issue, regional fragmentation, and then also reliability versus cost of various solutions. To overcome these challenges, a collaborative path forward is needed, and we're considering looking at a public-private partnership with all of the above stakeholders. And that's a discussion that we'd like to have to target research and technology roadmaps and so forth. But in general, if there's any interest in participating with us, we have a centralized hub for this information, and there's an email address that you can find at DOE's website, but I'll mention it momentarily. Have you got your pens ready? It is businesshub@hq.doe.gov.
Great. And that load flexibility piece I want to come back to because I think it's really important, and we'll double click into it. But before doing that, Pranava, I want to turn it over to you to hear a little bit about the request for information that DOE recently released about the possibility of opening up our own DOE sites for data center and energy development. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So I guess before I get into it, just a quick raise of hands. Who's heard about DOE's RFI for data centers on DOE lands? Okay, that's a good portion of the audience. Now, who's heard about DOD's similar RFI for siting on a Tucson DOD site? Okay, still quite a few. So as you can see, there's a lot of interest and excitement in the government to support this AI boom and AI leadership globally within the US. And the key piece of that is making sure we can have the infrastructure, both from the data center side to support training, inference, and leading on the development of the next generation of frontier models, but also on the energy infrastructure side, which, as we all know, is one of the key kind of focus areas to enabling this AI revolution. So we identified 16 DOE sites, which are a mix of former environmental cleanup sites, national security sites, and national labs. And the way we found out was we asked all of the DOE sites who wanted to be listed on the RFI, and these are all the sites that had information and had interest in being included in the RFI at this stage. So what we're trying to do is, number one, we'd love to hear from all of you about, are any of these sites suitable for the types of data centers that would facilitate this AI boom, or even that you would be interested in for your own operations? Two, are there sites that we didn't list that should be included? So we're also looking at other sites that aren't in this RFI, but at some point this year, we'd love to move to a solicitation stage for some subset of those sites. And we need your feedback to inform what those would be. And then also we have 10 categories of questions to help us answer. One, what should contract and lease terms look like? What are specific technologies that we should be thinking about? What are state, local, and tribal government considerations for those particular sites that we should be thinking about and engaging with in advance of a solicitation? What are specific on-site energy requirements or even other infrastructure outside of the site that we would need to make a site attractive? What's the key water and other land requirements that you might have? So there's a number of these questions. Oh, and then also economic development within regions. I think as we've talked to a lot of state local partners and data center developers, we've heard a key question is, what's the economic impact between jobs, both temporary and permanent, also state sales tax exemptions for large loads versus specifically data centers. So all these considerations that you would take into making a business decision about a site, we would love to get feedback on how we should think about it so we can take that and then whittle down the list and then put out solicitations down the line. And all of that with the goal of commencing operations by 2027. So I know that's a pretty tight timeline, but we'd also love to hear, is that even realistic given specific considerations of developing on federal sites? And some of these federal sites have a mix of different federal agency authorities over them. So those are all the stuff that we're bringing to the table. So we're getting information from you, but we're hoping that we can provide potentially faster permitting, faster development timelines. And at a lot of these sites, we have years and years of environmental data that we could help put towards assessments or EISs or whatever kind of is needed for NEPA at that particular site.
And how can people learn more about the RFI?
Yes, the key question. So you can reach out to us at AI Infrastructure, all one word, AI Infrastructure at hq.doe.gov. And so we're all looking at the Business Hub email, the AI Infrastructure email, and our RFI closes on May 7th. So please get in your answers, your responses to us early. So we're looking at that in real time.
We promise there won't be a quiz later about the email addresses we're throwing at you, but we are available if you missed any of those. Amazing. Okay, so we've talked a bit about the technical programs that ITO and the national labs are doing, the RFI for how DOE is trying to help develop infrastructure. A big part of DOE is also helping on the financing side. Jen, curious to hear a little bit more about your work of what is the Loan Programs Office and how can LPO, the Loan Programs Office, support data center energy infrastructure?
Sure. Thanks, Louise, and good morning, everyone. So I like the interactive strategy. How many folks have heard of the Loan Programs Office at the Department of Energy? All right, great. Well, if you're wondering, how am I going to pay for the energy infrastructure needed to power these data centers, that's why I'm on stage. So the Loan Programs Office was established in 2005, and it was really meant to finance nuclear because private sector banks were not willing to take on the risk associated with the kind of size of financing for a technology such as nuclear. And since 2005, our financing authorities have grown thanks to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. And we have several different loan programs. I lead business development for the Title 17 loan program. And that has two sleeves to it. The first is for innovative clean energy. And so those types of projects could include things like enhanced geothermal or a novel battery storage, both of which could help power a data center. We also finance projects that manufacture equipment or components in the supply chain for innovative energy infrastructure. And then the second sleeve of the Title 17 loan program is the 1706 Energy Infrastructure Reinvestment Program. Now, that doesn't have an innovation requirement. It can be known technologies like transmission, gas generation, solar, wind storage. But there must be a nexus to existing energy infrastructure. So think reusing an existing point of interconnection, or if there is a retired asset, retooling it or bringing it back online or replacing it with an energy infrastructure asset. And the key piece of that being the program is meant to kind of reinvest in communities that have either lost an asset or have an aging asset, and really kind of reinvigorate that part of the grid, whether it's on the power side or the gas side. So those two loan programs can both be helpful in paying for energy infrastructure to support data centers. I will underscore that we are a loan program, not a grant program office. So all of the projects and all of our loans must have a reasonable prospect of repayment. So that sets apart our office from many of the other DOE offices that are providing grants to support these projects in different ways.
Amazing. So if you want money, she's a woman to talk to. So want to come back to what we started talking about around load flexibility. And Paul, curious if you could maybe start with talking a little bit more about thinking about data center load and how that can be flexible. And then Jen, I'm going to be curious to hear your thoughts about how do we think about flexibility for the kind of grid system writ large.
Interesting question. Is it still on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think it is.
Great. Well, I think a lot of people in the audience are going to be much more aware than we are on specific load changes in data centers. One of the things that I learned at the workshop at LBNL on load flexibility is that even large facilities will ramp up and down within seconds, frequently, and that's quite shocking. Excuse the pun. And we've got to look at what the opportunities exist in that area. And I think there's a lot that we can do with the grid that we have and with the energy generation that we have and the data centers that we have to look at innovative ways to deal with that. We were talking about it a bit earlier. Some of the growth could be in other regions and so forth. But there could be some fairly innovative on-site solutions that we can apply. And I think I detected here in some pamphlets that our utility companies are already getting pretty innovative with respect to rate structures and so forth, recognizing that the average load of a data center is not really comparable with the peak load of the agreement that they have with the utility company.
And is there anything that ITO is doing? I know there are some like technical assistance programs, I think, focused on this. Are there any programs that folks in the audience should be aware about, kind of in looking in that
Sure,
space?
absolutely. So we have a program at multiple national labs and at 10 regional technical assistance centers around the nation that are very familiar with local codes and regulations that will give advice on any and all of the available technology solutions, ranging from SMRs to natural gas solutions to combined heat and power, if that's relevant at all here, to geothermal, both for power generation and for finding cold reservoirs. So our TAPS program, you can find more information at that if you Google energy TAPS. On-site energy at the Department of Energy to get assistance through those, and LBNL is associated with that as well. We also have a very innovative prize out there that is actually targeted towards data centers on energy storage, and it looks at figuring out ways to tap cold and to do power generation and to supply to try to match better the difference between supply and demand. And we do financial assistance within our part of DOE. So I'm in what's called EERE. We don't do loans. We don't exactly do grants, but we do financial instruments where we work in cooperative research agreements with stakeholders. It's sort of like a grant.
Awesome. That tees us up nicely to hear more about some of the kind of generation and how we think about load flexibility, not within the data center, but for either behind the meter or the grid. Jen?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Louise. Kind of set of technologies that I think a lot about and that folks across our office and DOE think about are technologies that allow us to get more out of the existing grid that we've already built and paid for. And I would kind of look at two sides of the grid. There's the transmission side, and then there's the distribution side. So on the transmission side, we are big advocates and love to finance grid-enhancing technologies. So that would include technologies like dynamic line rating, where you can kind of flow more power through lines if it's not too hot or if it's not too windy, and get more power out of those lines rather than having a static maximum. Or advanced conductors, where by restringing transmission lines with new materials, you can get sometimes upwards of 50% more capacity without building a new transmission line, which might require a new right-of-way, which can be tricky to procure. There are also grid-enhancing technologies such as advanced power flow controls or topology optimization that can, again, get more out of the transmission lines that we have today. On the distribution side, we think a lot about demand flexibility coming from behind the meter, from a variety of different distributed energy resources, or DERs. A really rapidly growing type of DER are batteries. So whether it's behind the meter battery in someone's garage that they're using for backup power, or if it's actually located on the distribution grid at a feeder, for example, maybe it's owned by the utility, it helps balance the kind of supply and demand of power from the distribution side rather than from the bulk power side, as you might do with a utility scale battery or a gas peaker plant or other type of power plant that can turn on and off in response to peak demand. So on the latter side, as we look at the distribution side, we use the term virtual power plant to talk about aggregations of distributed energy resources, such as batteries, but also, smart thermostats with electric heating, or pool pumps that could be controlled remotely, or smart water heaters, or smart EV chargers that, when their owners opt into a program saying, hey, I don't mind if you turn off my pool pump during peak hours, I'll run it off peak. That can actually ease the pressure on the grid, take pressure off of the distribution system or the transmission system or power plants to better balance supply and demand, so that you're using the same amount of electricity overall. You're just using it at optimal times for the grid, so that you don't have these wild swings in demand. So we are supporting the adoption of that program among utilities through a variety of different offices, including Paul's office. We're financing those types of projects at the Loan Programs Office. And it's exciting to see maybe it's not the folks who are building the data centers advocating for the adoption of those types of technologies, but we're trying to get utility regulators, wholesale markets to consider these technologies, basically to take advantage of headroom on the grid so that we can install more load, such as from data centers.
And I think that's where the data center company themselves may not be the ones building those pieces, but we have heard already of many developers, data center owners who are talking with their utilities about these types of solutions to see how we can free up capacity. Maybe it's deploying a lot of DERs in the next door town, so you free up system capacity so the data center can connect more quickly. So there's a lot of innovative kind of structures and opportunities, I think, to tap into there, where data center folks can be leaders in making sure that full set of solutions are being talked about, so that it's not just like, nope, we don't have capacity, see you later. That we do think there's a lot of opportunity for more creativity in that space.
And I would just plug a good place to learn more about those two sets of technologies would be the liftoff reports that Louise mentioned. So on the transmission side, for innovative grid technologies, we have a report, The Pathway to Commercial Liftoff for Innovative Grid Tech, which Louise helped lead or led, and then also the pathway to commercial liftoff for virtual power plants, which we published in 2023 and then updated in January of 2025. That gives you a good kind of lay of the land of the technology, the market, the adoption trends, et cetera, if you're curious to learn more about those technologies.
And a big part of figuring out those kind of innovative structures are the tariffs that data center companies are entering into with their utility partners. And that's another area where DOE is doing a bit of work. Pranava, curious if you could speak to some of the kind of non-technology efforts that DOE and the Office of Policy are helping to push there.
Yeah, absolutely. So in January, our Lawrence Berkeley National Lab put out a paper on electricity rate designs for large loads. So how many people have actually seen that paper? We got one or two in the back? Okay, well, if you haven't seen it, I would really recommend it. So in that paper, we did a survey of different rate designs across the country, some from NV Energy, Xcel Energy, Indiana Michigan Power Company, Ohio Power, and we looked at what are all the different types of components that are included in tariffs and successful tariffs that are able to balance the needs of developers and the load, and also not without passing costs on to ratepayers. And so this is a really fundamental component of how we're thinking about also our broader data center development strategy, is making sure that we're not passing off costs to residential ratepayers. And so I would recommend you all see it. It's just really a survey of what's out there, but that's just a sample of the type of thinking that we want to be doing more of with industry. And a lot of industry partners actually contributed feedback to us in the production of that survey. Another thing I will plug as related to that is we also have a state technical assistance program for state energy offices and public utilities commissions that will help them with planning and also thinking through these kinds of issues. So if you are from one of those offices or you work with them, this is a great resource where we can pair experts from our national labs with y'all to answer those questions.
Awesome. All right. So we are now to the point where I'm about to open it up for audience questions. So get ready, and I'll ask you to, if you can stand up and try to project loudly, and I'll repeat the question. But before that, a couple things to take away. DOE is here to be a partner. There are a suite of energy and grid solutions available to help meet data center power demands in the near term and in the long term. And DOE has a variety of resources. We heard about technical assistance, the RFI, financing resources available to support. So we really invite you all to continue the conversation with us even beyond today, and let us know and reach out at one of those email addresses, whether it's the business hub at hq.doe.gov or aiinfrastructure@hq.doe.gov. Please do continue the conversation, and we look forward to partnering with you to support AI leadership in America. All right. Any questions for any of our folks? Yes, please.
How's it going, everybody? Thanks for being here. My name is Abhi. I have an AI company in Silicon Valley. Our whole mission as a company is helping America win the race for AI infrastructure. One way we do that is we develop AI models. We're working with a utility in the Southeast where we're connecting data center loads to grid. If we can predict loads based on data center usage, one thing that we're finding is data to train on is very difficult to find. It's not like large language models. These are physical AI models. So we have to go and work with enterprises to get access to their data lakes, usage data, connect that with grid data lakes. Is there data lakes, and there's so many that you guys might have, that U.S. enterprises can train on and use that to develop AI models for the better development of physical AI?
So to repeat the question, it's around the challenges of getting data to be able to forecast and predict where load is going to be across the system. Are there any kind of data resources that DOE has?
Yeah, I can take a first stab at that. So we, as you probably know, a lot of that grid data is very sensitive. So we do have a number of ongoing partnerships between DOE, utilities, grid operators, and private industry partners to do very similar kinds of assessments, and I'm sure you're well aware of what it takes to kind of get some of those partnerships up. But the answer is yes, we do have that. It's not necessarily all readily publicly available, but if you're interested, you can reach out to Business Hub at hq.doe.gov. We all look at that, and we can find the right office to connect you to that is working on that exact space. But we do that from a security standpoint, from a planning standpoint, and there's a lot of work in that space at DOE.
We also have, and this is potentially relevant depending on the size that you're trying to interconnect, that we have a compilation of distribution circuit capacity maps. It's called a distribution circuit atlas. It's where DOE has aggregated publicly available distribution system capacity maps into one place if the utility has opted to provide that data. Now, if you're looking to interconnect, a gigawatt load, that's not going to hit the distribution grid. But I think it offers a good model of a transparent way to provide information about where new loads can connect.
Yes, gentleman in the white. So the question was around kind of demand management, demand flexibility, and some of the challenges associated with the high reliability and uptime requirements to power data centers, and how to get around that when we think about demand side. Jen?
Yeah, sure, I can take that one. So I've seen data centers participate in a couple ways. One is demand response programs, and frankly, it's with the most flexible data center loads. You're seeing a lot of this in Texas, crypto mining operations that know exactly their willingness to maybe I'll call it willingness to earn, to shut off when energy prices in ERCOT, the Texas energy market, go high enough. And so they might work through an aggregator, a third-party tech platform that writes a contract with the data center, and then on the other side participates in the energy market when the grid needs it for a given price. So that's one way that we're seeing it. But I think also when data centers are installing this redundancy behind the meter, whether it's a genset or a battery, they might be, depending on the market in which they're operating, they may be able to actually export power back to the grid when it needs it. There are two ways to participate, depending on where you are in the country, either directly into the wholesale market, and that will be governed by, sorry to be getting very technical, but hopefully I'll throw out some buzzwords you can Google. It'll be governed by FERC Order 2222 implementation rules. FERC Order 2222 was passed several years ago, said every wholesale market needs to figure out how to allow distributed energy resources to export power back to the grid so that we can bring more capacity into our markets. And so some transmission operators have already implemented that. Some are slower to implement. But I would pay attention to the wholesale market rules that would allow export from behind the meter back to the grid. Alternatively, if the data center is in a part of the country that has a vertically integrated utility and no wholesale market because the utility owns the full stack of energy infrastructure, typically that the utility will either establish a program that defines the parameters of, hey, here's how much we're going to pay you, at what times, how often, here's your right to opt out of a curtailment event, or it would be not necessarily a program that the utility has established. It would just be a bilateral contract because you're a big enough load that they're willing to kind of custom write you a tariff.
And I'll add to that with a couple examples that I've seen I don't know the details of how they've arranged this, but it could be interesting to look into. One is with a company called Iron Mountain in West Virginia, who received actually some DOE grant money to deploy some kind of innovative ways of doing demand-side flexibility and load curtailment and systems. So that's a kind of ongoing project that hopefully will help pave the way for some of that. And I even saw, I think, a flyer today of Dominion Energy with a Gap Flex program where they're offering kind of a optional way to be willing to maybe accept lower reliability standards or something to be able to connect more load. I think the pressures that we're seeing today are starting to open up a lot more creativity in ways that we haven't necessarily had the opportunity or need to around some of the SLA and reliability constraints in the past. So there may be some ways to renegotiate there, but just 2 more examples.
And I would just give a quick plug for the Electric Power Research Institute and their DC Flex initiative, which is specifically working with utilities to look into how to take advantage of flexible data center loads, recognizing their kind of power needs and kind of testing their willingness to turn off or to move locations of where they're training the model or to use behind the meter assets when the grid is stressed.
More questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Siri Hedgebeam, a reporter with S&P Global. My question is, I understand there have been reports of Trump administration wanting to cut DOE programs and pull back grants and loans. So I guess for a company looking to partner with DOE, what would you say to them, if they're kind of worried about the DOE honoring that partnership?
Yes, great question. So the question was around some reports recently from the Trump administration and around potentially cutting and reducing DOE loan and grant and staff capacity, and what kind of are some considerations there. Any responses?
I would just say that companies shouldn't hesitate to reach out to our offices and communicate how important and valuable those programs would be.
Please.
In your RFI, you talk about the available energy or kilowatts, megawatts at each particular site. How was that determined? Is that behind the meter, or is it a combination meter, utility, resources in the area for each of the different sites? Kind of generally how?
Yes, the question was around for the RFI, how to think about the size of the sites.
Yeah, so we basically went to each site and we asked them for what they thought their capacity was. I think in the RFI, in most places, we denote whether it's on-site, but I think for the most part, it's from what their actual transmission capacity is for the site. I think for on-site capacity, that'll vary based on what the energy mix is we bring in a potential project. So if you have a question about a particular site, please email us and we can see if we can get a more clear answer if it's not clear enough in the RFI for you.
All right, I think we have time for maybe one more question. Yes, sir.
Thanks for the panelist question on the 2 days being here. A lot of people seem to be looking for new dispatchable thermal power generation capacity for the AI data centers, and a lot of that equipment is actually imported to the country today, and we're seeing interesting discussions on importation tariffs and how that's impact now the race of the AI data.
Yes, so question was around how the recent announcements around tariffs and other market factors could impact the race for AI innovation and how it might impact the ability to build out infrastructure and projects. Any?
Yeah, I'll say you're not the first person I've heard that question from. I think we get this question pretty frequently, especially around our AI infrastructure plans. I guess the answer is we'd love to hear from you about specific examples around it. I think in particular on the RFI, if you're interested in responding, we have a section around components and supply chain questions. So we'd love to hear that feedback from you, and we can kind of work through that together.
And I would add maybe to that and to the question around current thoughts about DOE's capacity, it is really important and helpful to us when we hear from you both how important different DOE programs are or other federal programs are, or how the impacts of tariffs are meaningfully impacting our ability to compete on a national scale. So the more that you can, reach out to us and tell us so we can funnel that up, or reach out to your kind of raise awareness in every realm possible, so that there is kind of a real and broad understanding of the impacts. I think there's certainly, we're trying to do that, so please reach out to let us help you do that. But the more that y'all can act to help and raise the alarm as well is always helpful. Any last comments on that one? Okay, then I think we're about to wrap up. So I'm going to steal and take the last question for our folks in just a really quick rapid round. What is one thing that you want folks to leave today remembering? Pranava, do you want to start? And we'll go down the line.
AI infrastructure at hq.doe.gov. Regardless of what I'll just say this, there is top-down support for AI infrastructure and the associated energy generation needed for it, and doing it at a federal level. So even if there's no executive order behind this particular RFI, there's a lot of support. So you can trust that we're going to be committed to partnering on that.
For me, I would like you to take away that the Loan Programs Office at DOE can help finance the energy infrastructure to power data centers that support AI. There is a sense of urgency because not only is the demand growing rapidly, but we need to commit the Title 17 loans by September of 2026. And it takes about a year to go through our diligence process because we are very thorough in our underwriting. So please consider Title 17, and we would love to have a conversation about financing your project.
And last thought from me is that apparently we ain't seen nothing yet. Apparently you all think that between 3 and 10 years from now is going to be a really, really, really challenging period of time for additional load growth. So DOE intends to be here to help you. From our office, it's with looking at technical support on technical solutions of all of the above. Thank you.
Amazing. Please join me in thanking our panelists, and thank you all for joining us today.